All right, so there's some weird trees inside of this forest preserve, or it's technically a bog. What kind are they? Well, let's find out. All right, so I'm doing this video like old style where I'm actually talking instead of narrating. I don't know, it just got kind of old, always recording stuff and then having to do the voiceover, and then I really didn't, there's a temptation to just, oh, I'll get around to that eventually, but then I never end up getting around to it, which is why videos are not posted super frequently on my channel. But anyways, why did we come here today? We came here because there's bald cypress. Now, some of you may know that bald cypress is one of my favorite trees. However, you may also know I've had some difficulty growing it. It shouldn't be super difficult, and it is cold hardy to this area. And I thought they might be growing wild here, although I believe they're planted, and I don't see too many seedlings. They might be a little bit cold sensitive when they're younger, but this is a good sign that this plant can exist here. So here we have the bald cypress. There's one, there's another, and it's not, showing super great on camera, but fortunately, this branch is kind of, easily accessible here. You can see it's got that unique foliage. There is what the bark looks like. And of course, all of this turns orange and falls off in the autumn. It's a deciduous conifer. So we have one there, another one there. We have this kind of river by a bridge, and then there's going to be some more over there. So basically, I was speculating this might be like a wilderness kind of area where they are growing wild, a small wild population of bald cypress. Wouldn't that be great? But I think, these are all planted. It almost looks like this place was an abandoned arboretum. And there's a sign in the parking lot, and it says something like it's reclaimed land. So I don't know what this was originally, if they tried to make this an arboretum, or if there was, some other purpose to it. But there are a lot of plants here that seem to be introduced. All right, so you can see these stand out. They're more bald cypress trees, and they stand out against the background. They have kind of a unique color to the foliage. Some of that is the sunlight beaming down, of course, but I think overall, especially when they're old and they kind of have that flat top look, bald cypress is a very unique looking tree, especially, if you get up close and see the foliage. It's unique looking foliage. And this one especially is kind of interesting because, as you can see, it's kind of all growing in this kind of flat plane right on that branch. So they have just started leafing out, and we'll get, a little bit, larger leaves, although not too large. So very interesting growth habit on these bald cypress. And then, of course, we have 3 more here. And, you can see there's a lot of dead branches here. So, maybe we're a little too far north for them, which kind of is a bummer for trying to grow this as a containerized plant. Although, I don't know, maybe it'll work, but, that's kind of how they look like here. All right, so originally, that was the whole video I planned, and, it was kind of just a short, oh, look, there's bald cypress here that someone planted a long time ago. But as I started walking around this preserve, I thought, maybe there's some sundews here, possibly some Sarracenia, and just, went to take a look around, and I stumbled upon more interesting trees. So let's go see what else is here that I find interesting. Okay, so as we're coming down the trail here, you see this body of water, and I'm gonna probably move along fast because that means there's millions of mosquitoes. Even the bug spray doesn't work super well, but you'd figure, okay, this would be a good place for more bald cypress. But that's not true. There isn't any bald cypress here, so it looks like they're just in that one area. And that kind of makes me think they were planted, because if this was kind of a natural area for bald cypress to grow, you would expect them to inhabit multiple wetland spots. But this is the tree that's our next stop. Very interesting. I can't get a super great look at it. Maybe, if I put the camera up here, you can see that's ginkgo biloba. So, of course, this tree is from China. very, very not native to the area. You know, the bald cypress, it's kind of a stretch. You know, you can think, oh, maybe there's a fragmented population, but that's definitely planted here by someone very close to the trail, which made me think this is probably like, you know, an abandoned arboretum or something, because there's quite a few more trees we're gonna see that are not native to this area, and then it's just very strange that they're growing. Here we have a hemlock tree. I'm going to move up closer. Hemlock is, I don't know, one of my favorite trees, I guess. I just bought one recently as a containerized plant to hopefully turn into a bonsai. And it's got very unique foliage. It's, of course, an evergreen tree, but you can see it's got kind of this flattened look to the foliage, kind of a dwarf size to those needles, even though this is a full-grown tree. You know, just standard evergreen. If there were some cones on it, it grows these small cones like pine cones, but there don't appear to be any on this one. But, you know, the foliage itself, I think, looks very nice. So there's one here. No seedlings growing underneath it, so that also kind of makes me think, these are probably not native to this area. Otherwise, there'd be enough of them to, you know, sustain themselves and be multiplying through the area. And there's a second one, and I looked around, and I think these are the only two that are here. So we've got the hemlock back there, another hemlock here. I don't know what kind of hemlock this is, if it's, you know, what, Canadian or Eastern hemlock, I'm not really sure how many different kinds there are and, you know, how to differentiate them. I became interested in this particular genre very recently, but I know that is a hemlock. Very interesting. Okay, so this next plant is the one that made me stop and go, wait, what? The hemlock we saw earlier, kind of unusual, but you could probably find it in this area. A bald cypress, kind of unusual, but you know, maybe. And then, you know, just the one ginkgo tree. It's like, okay, well, one ginkgo tree got planted here. But right behind me, you can see a Japanese maple. So let's go take a look at that. Okay, so we have to climb this little ridge here. Not too bad, but I mean, you can see that foliage. Very typical Japanese maple. You can see the green bark, which is another characteristic of, you know, maple trees in general. And, well, not all of them, not when they're old, but when they're young. The young wood can have this greenish coloration to it. And of course, it's staying kind of like a dwarf size. So that was very interesting. And I thought, okay, maybe there's just one, but there's tons of them. So there's that lone one growing on this ridge. And I'm looking around for seedlings here, kind of, you know, quickly glancing. It's not really too important right now. It doesn't really matter because we're going to come to an area where they are super abundant, and it's right there by the entrance to this place. Okay, so here we have an older Japanese maple, and you can see it's not doing super well, which is actually kind of good because this is not a native maple tree to Illinois. So it looks like, you know, judging by the age of that must have been planted first, kind of on this ridge by the entrance. And then if you look at this very carefully, you can see all of that is Japanese maple. So it looks like they may have grown from seed from this one. Now, the interesting thing is that we, of course, have these ones with the green foliage, and you can see them back there too, but then there's these ones with the red foliage popping out. So I think that might just be a thing, like how, you know, seed-grown plants, a certain percentage of them comes up with the red foliage, and then most of it is the typical green foliage. And I know there's different varieties of Japanese maples, but I'm not sure what this one is in particular. I mean, you know, obviously this adult version of it, you know, someone might be able to tell specifically, you know, but maybe not. I mean, there's so many cultivars, probably can't get an exact ID, but it is Japanese maple for sure. So you can see there's just tons of them. It's like a big grove of them growing all over here. There's some small seedlings up there, and then of course tiny seedlings popping up all over the place here. So this would be a very good place to get some bonsai material if you are so inclined. Some people might not be a fan of that. You know, they like the way this looks, but since this is all non-native, I pretty much encourage everybody to come out here, rip it up, dig it out, do whatever you want. You know, some people like to consult agencies, do things legally, but we don't need to do that. We just need to use our brain, and if something doesn't belong somewhere, just get rid of it. That's my philosophy anyways. Not everyone will agree with it, but I do, and I believe that I am in the right. But anyways, you know, I'm not going to go in here because of the tick issue, but, you know, there's another one of these red morphs of the Japanese maple. And since they're all growing amongst each other, I think this is just, you know, some of the seeds ended up reverting to, or maybe not reverting, maybe morphing. I don't know which way it goes for this particular species, but they have that reddish coloration. And yeah, of course, you have larger sized trees, like these are about 5 feet tall, and then, you know, have seedlings here and there. Here's some more, you know, red ones you can see, like a small little red one. So that was a very interesting find. You know, obviously I never thought I would be walking through, you know, some forest preserve in Illinois and, oh, look, there's, you know, I don't know how many that is, like 200 Japanese maple trees. But there they are. Almost looks like a, you know, row of cannabis that somebody planted, which would be quite funny, and I would make a video on that. But no, it's all just Japanese maples, and I think that's about it. All right, so I guess maybe one last thing. Over here we have another maple, and it's a maple that is used for bonsai trees sometimes. It's a trident maple. Of course, it's another non-native plant, probably, you know, planted here. I don't know if it was, you know, trying to become an arboretum or what. You know, interesting species, not anything that I've been super interested in, you know, growing in my own collection personally, but interesting to see it kind of growing semi-wild here. Okay, so that was our trip to this forest preserve. Hopefully there's not a bunch of ticks on me. I didn't go deep into those Japanese maples to try and avoid that because it's been too frequent recently. But hopefully you still got a good glimpse of that grove of Japanese maple trees. Very interesting. I never thought I would see that growing, you know, in a forest preserve in northern Illinois. So like I mentioned, I recommend, you know, everybody, if they see Japanese maples in the forest preserve, go dig them up. They're not native plants. They don't belong there. There's really no reason for Japanese maples to start colonizing areas in North America. So that might be good bonsai tree Yamadori, which means wild collected specimens. Over here, they're not too good. I mean, they're seedlings, and you know, the trunk is pretty much very straight at, you know, the thickest. It was maybe a little bit thicker than my thumb. So nothing super interesting to dig up and collect, but hey, I mean, if somebody wants a little seedling, whatever. So that's my opinion on that. You know, I know some people might say, oh, well, no, maybe because it's like an arboretum kind of place, or, oh, you know, it's not doing any harm. Oh, it looks nice. No, you know, invasive, and even if they're not invasive, still, if they're non-native, they don't belong there. They start taking over slowly. Dig them up, get rid of them. There's plenty of plants like that in the forest preserve, actually. There's European buckthorn, there's Japanese honeysuckle. That's all invasive, and I always just rip it out if I ever come across those plants. Of course, in some areas, they're, you know, super heavy, and it would, you know, take weeks and months and years to get rid of all of that. They even do volunteer programs at some preserves, and then of course stuff grows back. So that's just my opinion. You know, if people want to remove invasive species, I don't see a problem with that. Knock yourself out. So that's my advice, and hope you enjoyed this video. Very bizarre trees in this bald cypress swamp. Nice grove of Japanese maples. So I'll be back with more of the cultivated plant stuff later on, probably next week. So you can hit the subscribe button down below to be notified when I make a new video. But for now, that's it. Hope you enjoyed.